Hello everybody, the FPS tester here, aka Veda, and welcome to Warframe. Today we're going to be benchmarking 1080p and 1440p. We're going to use the medium and high presets, and I'm also going to manually adjust all of the settings to the maximum settings as well. For this benchmark, I'm going to be going to a regular mission, and then I'm going to be going to a open world to see if there's any difference in performance between a regular mission and open world. So without further ado, let's get started. To get started, we're going to be using 1080p with the medium preset. We're not going to go any lower than medium as there's really no point. The FPS is already high enough. So those are the settings for medium. Let's get straight into it. So we're here in a regular mission. I like to come here to benchmark as it's really simple for me to lag out apparently, but no, it's really simple for me to come here and benchmark. It's a really nice comfortable zone where I don't have to bother too much. But as you can see at 1080p using medium settings, we're actually GPU bound here. We're fully utilizing the GPU here. Even though it says 95%, we are fully utilizing it. It's only using 3.7 gigs of VRAM. The CPU, interestingly, is at about 30%, and RAM usage is quite high at 20 gigs nearly. Well, closer to 19 gigs, but you get the gist. We'll just play around a little bit. There is some motion blur, I believe. Let me have a look if medium settings actually has motion blur. It does. By default, has motion blur turned on, depth of field, and film grain. Three settings I would usually turn off, but for the sake of the benchmark, we'll leave them on. I've not made any setting changes, so I don't know why it's asking me that. I did forget to mention that I have Warframe installed on an SSD, so there shouldn't be any hiccups there or FPS drops because of the slow loading speed, which can happen if you play with a hard drive with a lot of games these days. And at the end of the video, I will be testing out the CPU by itself by lowering the settings and the resolution and so on. I haven't played Warframe in a very long time. I'm not an active Warframe player anymore, so this is don't mind the gameplay. This is literally the first time I've loaded the game up since I last benchmarked it, so yeah. It's not something I play anymore. Game feels great. Like, I'm not feeling any kind of lag or any input delay. Game feels very smooth. One thing I really like about Warframe is the game really does feel very fluid, as long as you've got the FPS to support the movement, of course. Okay, so I've been playing for a couple of minutes now. The game feels very smooth here, so I'm going to go ahead and bump the settings up to high. Okay, so I just adjusted the settings, 1080p. We're now playing on high preset, which isn't the highest settings in the game, but we'll get to that later when I manually adjust them to the highest settings that you can get. So let's see how this performs. I just reset the FPS counter so we can actually count it for this preset. VRAM usage is still interestingly at 3.7 gigs. I would have expected that to increase considering I have increased the graphical quality. I would have expected the VRAM to go up a little bit. We're playing at around 200 to 250 FPS here in this mission at least. Now granted, it's not the biggest map in the game, and it certainly isn't spawning the most enemies you'll see. That's why we're going to go into the open world later. The game looks very bizarre with motion blur. I never play any games with motion blur. It certainly does add like a cinematic effect to the game. Obviously, it's not ideal for most players. I would normally turn it off, but I'm just leaving it on since it's part of the preset. Even if it's part of the preset for benchmarking, I would usually turn motion blur off and film grain and so on. It does look really cinematic. Oh, somebody wants to leave. That's not going to be happening. 3-1. You know, 1080p playing at the high settings, the game feels totally fine. So why don't we go ahead and switch it to the highest settings that you can get in the game? Okay, so I've manually gone through and adjusted every single setting to the highest you can put them to. So as you can see, we're on custom. We've got the GPU particles to ludicrous. We've got the SSAO quality to very high, volumetric fog quality to high, which is the highest you can get them to. They're all in the highest settings, so let's see how it does at 1080p. Ooh, already, I've literally just started playing, and our 1% lows are at 147. So again, our 1% lows did get a little bit lower, though the average FPS is anywhere from, it's about 180 to 200, so we definitely did lose some frames, but by no means is this a bad experience. It feels very good. VRAM usage only creeped up a little bit. We're still under 4 gigs, which is just crazy. Of course, the CPU usage went down because we are generating less frames thanks to the GPU bottleneck. And I do want to quickly say that I know performance will differ depending on the abilities that are being used, you know, what the other players are doing in terms of what characters they're playing or warframes that they're playing or what abilities they're using. Like, I know that certain Warframes do have more demanding abilities in terms of graphically demanding, but that's impossible for me to benchmark consistently. And even then, you're still going to get different enemies spawning in probably. So, you know, you're never going to be able to perfectly replicate the benchmarks against each other. When I was playing Warframe as an actual, like, player, I had a lot of issues performance-wise with my old gaming PC. And, you know, I wouldn't be complaining about this kind of performance for sure. But I'm pretty happy with this. We're getting averages of around 200 FPS. It looks like these guys are going to want to go, so I'll go with them. And then we'll come back in and we'll start benchmarking 1440p. Okay, so now we're at 1440p. The preset is on medium, as you can see here. And let's go ahead and jump in the same mission and see what the performance is like. Okay, so we just loaded into the mission with the 1440p settings, and at medium we're getting around 200 already, 200 FPS. It would seem 220. VRAM usage 3.9 gigs. 1% lows at 140, which is a little bit lower than last time at 1080p. To put it into perspective, we're getting around the same 1% lows as we did with the highest settings at 1080p, with medium settings at 1440p. That's interesting. What the hell? I'm up in the... Hello? I'm up in the raft. In the rafters or the pipelines. I'm in. I just vented. Kinda sus. Our Fortnite meme still... Fortnite? It's not even Fortnite, it's Among Us. Jesus Christ, I'm old. But, is it still trendy? Is it still trendy to talk about Among Us? Probably not. It's like, what, 2 years old now? I don't know. I'm losing it, man. I'm getting old. Even with the 1% lows showing at 147, it's still very smooth. Like, it's just not noticeable. I'm playing at 144 hertz, so it's not really noticeable for me. Like, there are occasions where I feel a dip, but it's not anything terrible, you know? Like, it's just whatever once you've got this kind of frame rate. So, let's go ahead and jump into high settings and see what that's like. Okay, so now we're on high settings at 1440p. Let's go ahead and see what this is like. And immediately you can see we've lost a lot of FPS. We're around 120, 140, 1% lows of around 100 FPS. Even though it is below 144 Hz usually, it still feels very good. What I will say is if you're looking to play Warframe at 1440p with a 144 Hz monitor, this is fine. 1% lows of around 110, average FPS at about 140 there. Let's go ahead and switch it to the highest settings that you can get. Okay, so I've manually gone through and put the settings to the highest you can get in the game, as you can see right here. So let's go ahead and see what sort of performance we can expect to see. Okay, so we just got into another mission with some other people. Oh, I know that flickering. We're getting raided by someone. Something, I forgot what they are. I don't know. I can't remember what it is, but anyways, it's not relevant. So, at the highest settings, we're still at around 140 FPS, which I don't even know how that's possible. Yeah, we're playing with higher settings, yet we have very similar FPS. We're dropping down to 120. There is a lot of particles going on up here. What a combination. I chain them up and he just obliterates them. I mean, can he only kill the ground level though? Looks like it. Now, something that I am feeling, but I don't know if it's just a placebo. I definitely feel the game's responsiveness has slowed down a little bit. It may be a placebo. Obviously, I'll be able to see after the video. I haven't been paying attention to the frame time. It's certainly not bad. It's just something that I am noticing on occasion here. Other than that, everything is pretty similar. Average FPS of around 130, 1% lows of 100. This feels pretty good. I'm not going to say it feels 100% perfect. I have noticed that on occasion, my frame time feels slower, but like I said, that could just be a placebo. It's certainly not bad though, so do not be discouraged by that. It certainly feels more than fine. Like, it feels really playable. Like, I'm nitpicking here essentially, so, you know, take it with a grain of salt. They really love their particle effects in Warframe, don't they? I'll tell you what they don't love in Warframe. Dropping Warframes. Dropping the parts I need to make my new Warframe. Oh my god. I don't miss those days where I would spend weeks upon weeks trying to farm a particular Warframe and doing hours upon hours of the same run to try and get it and just not getting it. RNGesus did not love me back in the day, that's for sure. So for the final test in this mission type, I'm going to be testing the CPU primarily without the GPU limitation, and I'm going to achieve this by setting the resolution to 1080p. I've enabled DLSS and I put it to balance quality, and I've also adjusted the graphics to the lowest settings. That way we're not limited by the GPU in any ways, and we're just going to be simply focusing on the performance that the CPU has to offer. For those of you who are interested in the CPU and not the GPU in this case, because I understand it's an odd matchup. Oh man, look at that FPS. That is absolutely crazy. 370 FPS, 380. As you can see, the GPU usage is hovering around 60, 70%, so we're definitely not limited by that. The game looks totally fine, actually. You would not believe it, but I'm playing at 1080p right now with DLSS unbalanced on the lowest settings. I don't think the game looks that bad, in all honesty. Like, I know this is not the purpose of this part of the benchmark, but it doesn't look that bad. FPS, man, we're at 400 frames, 500 FPS. It really depends what's going on, but realistically, when there's enemies and we're fighting and using abilities, it looks like we dropped to like 300 frames. 1% lows of 275 here for the CPU, an average of 400. So yeah, that was the indoor, we'll call it the indoor mission. I don't really know what to call it. A standard mission, you could say. For the next part of this benchmark, we're going to be heading out to the open world. I haven't played Warframe in a couple of years, so do bear with me with the open world. For this test, I'm going to be heading over to Deimos, or Deimos, is it pronounced? I think it's pronounced Deimos. I don't know if there's new open worlds. I know Earth has one, and I know Deimos has one. But this one, I believe, is more performance intensive, so I'm going to go to this one. I could be wrong on that, but from my memory at least, when I used to play, this was more intensive for me to play. It was an actual nightmare for me to try and play the open world on here. So let's go ahead and head over there. We're at 1080p. We're using the medium preset again to start with. Man, look at the graphics of this place. This place looks gorgeous, though it is really bright because bloom is enabled by default with the medium preset. I would normally turn things like bloom off, and they really don't have that much of a performance impact usually in games, but for the sake of keeping the presets, you know, to their default values, we're leaving it on. Now, I have absolutely no idea where my allies have gone because I haven't played this game in a very long time. I just guessed it was Q to pull out my Archwing, and it is. I do not remember how to fly this thing, but we'll fly around a bit, see if we can get up to some trouble, and we'll see what sort of performance we get. How do I get out of this thing? Okay, that works. What do I do with these? Oh, I shoot them, I think. I think. I'm not sure. There are a few more FPS drops in the open world, it would seem, but that's obviously to do with the loading of all the assets and so on. 1% lows, as you can see, they're down at 116 at the moment, so, you know, still good, but definitely lower than when we're inside in a regular mission. And our average FPS is around 216, so I'm pretty happy with this. This is more than playable in the open world. Oh god. Oh, it's swapping the cycle. I remember this. They're gonna shoot each other. He's going Super Saiyan. Woo! Oh my god. Boom. Jesus. That's a thumbnail, boys. Thumbnails. Ah, that was a nice thumbnail. Anyways. Okay, now we're at 1080p using the high preset, and let's see what sort of performance we get. Create door bait to open the tunnel door. How do I do this? Sorry, I do want to actually help my team while I'm doing this. I don't want to be completely like dead weight for my team while I benchmark. Where's this bait? That's not bait. Also, I don't know why I'm purple. I don't know what's going on. Our FPS definitely did drop quite a bit. Here at high, I've been playing for a couple of minutes, and our 1% lows are about 100 FPS, which is a little bit lower than medium. Average FPS of around 144, but I have been seeing, when I've been fighting, my FPS dropping down to the 120s, which is still more than playable. So at 1080p, high settings, 1% lows of 100 FPS, average FPS of about 150, more than playable. Let's switch it over to the highest settings and see what that's like. Okay, so we're at 1080p. I've manually adjusted all the settings to the highest that you can get them to, and let's see what the performance is like. Okay, we're back into an open world lobby. I'm not sure what these guys are up to here, but I just got in, and there's some sort of centipede. Not to be confused with a millipede. That is a centipede. Oh, my teammates already appear to be in here. I don't think flying around in here is a good idea. Let's get out of there. Oh, is this technically still counting as open world benchmarking? Me being in here? I don't know. I'll come back to my teammates in a little bit, okay? I don't feel like it would be fair for me to benchmark all the other presets in, like, outside and then all of a sudden be inside again, right? I'm not sure how performance works in the open world, so we'll stay outside for a little bit. I'm sorry to be a detriment to my team. So, on higher settings, 1080p in the open world, 150 FPS on average, 1% lows of about 100. We are GPU bound, of course, but totally fine, totally playable. Let's go ahead and start testing 1440p. Okay, so we're on 1440p, medium preset, as you can see. Let's go ahead and start benchmarking. So, already at 1440p medium, we're at about 160 FPS, averages around about 150, 160. 1% lows are a little bit better than previously. We're at 1% lows of around 111. Yeah, this is fine. Totally playable. Let's go ahead and swap it over to something a little bit more demanding. Let's get it to the high preset. Okay, so we're at 1440p. Preset is on high. I'm getting attacked by an enemy, so let's quickly just show you these. I need to get out of here. Save it. Save it. Ah! Help! I'm fine. Just a little bit of chaos. Don't mind me. Totally normal. That's the end of the world. Don't go over there. Unless you like to die. But average FPS, 110, 112. How does it feel? Well, for flying, feels totally fine. 1% lows are dropping quite a bit. We're at the high 70s, pretty much low 80s. It does feel a bit slower to me, but it doesn't feel terrible. Like, I could play like this, but I can certainly tell that I'm not at 144 hertz, you know? Let me see if I remember how to kill this thing. Oh yeah, you just shoot it, right? Yeah, that usually that's how you kill things. It's still totally fine, still totally playable. Let's swap it over to the absolute maximum settings here, and we'll take a quick peek at that. Okay, so we're at 1440p. I've manually adjusted all of the settings to the highest you can get in the game, and let's see what the performance is like in the open world. Already flying around 1% lows are at 83 FPS, average at about 100. We are getting anywhere from around 100 to 120 FPS, and it does look like everything's fairly smooth. Oh, it's one of you. Get out of here. Oh, you're gonna shoot at me, eh? Oh, they actually knocked me out of the sky. I guess we'll benchmark on the ground now. Obviously, that was planned. What the hell? Who are you? Who are you shooting at? Oh, hi, guys. What? What is this? Oh, my pet died, didn't it? Yeah, my companion died, and it's turned into one of these. Oh, host migration. Yes, we're coming back, guys. FPS is quite low right now. We're at about 80. I got a stutter there. I did feel it. And I can see it in the frame time graph. I did feel that one. That was a very, very quick stutter, but I definitely felt the drop. I would say still more than playable. 1% lows, just above 70. You know, it's not ideal, but at the end of the day, you don't have to play with these settings. These are outrageously high. And realistically, you're probably going to want to turn some of them down anyways, so you're not having particles in your face every 2 seconds. Unless that's what you like, you know, not to be able to see what you're shooting at. Oh, let's get to the final part of this entire benchmark, which is going to be the CPU benchmark for the open world. And yeah, let's get to it. I'm getting attacked. I just... Yep, I just... Can I just... Will this work? That works! Yes! I cannot believe that works, just using the explosive mode. Look, I can just shoot the ground and it kills them. I didn't know I could just do that. Anyways, let me quickly get my settings for the CPU benchmark. Okay, so to benchmark the CPU in the open world, I've got the game set to 1080p. We're using the low preset, even though it says custom, it is on low. DLSS is on performance this time. The GPU was hovering around the low 90% usage with the balance preset. So just to make sure that the GPU is not causing any limitation, I've gone ahead and lowered this even more to performance. So let's go ahead and check what the CPU is capable of in the open world. Look at that frame time, 2 ms. That's like almost nothing, essentially. It's crazy. Look at that average frame rate. We're at about 400. The longer I play, the more accurate it will be. And I feel like it's more important for me to play longer when I am testing the CPU, because the frame rate will fluctuate so much when we're at this high of an FPS. You know, some areas we're going to lose like 100, 200 FPS, and in other areas we may gain 100, 200 FPS. So the average, you know, to get an accurate average reading, especially when your averages fluctuate so much, and also you've got so much FPS, you do need to play for a bit longer. So I will play here for quite a bit longer to test the CPU. The game doesn't look that bad. Obviously, the point of this part of the benchmark is not to see how good the game looks. Are they on our team? Trooper Survivor. Ah, I was shooting my allies. Hello, everybody. We got him. Overlord down. Get the Overlord. Woohoo! No Zergling drops into the main base for you, sir. Oh, that's Hydra's ability, right? Hydra, I think. I don't remember. Hydrate? Question mark? Oh my god. I can't believe this Zerg is spamming so many Niduses in my base. Just get out of here. So, I've just completed that one part of the mission, and as you can see, from all that fighting, my average FPS is around 390, 400, with the 1% lows being around 220, 230, which is really quite decent, to be honest. Okay, and that's the benchmark complete for today, guys. I hope you found this useful. Now, this benchmark has taken me a very long time to record, and no doubt it's going to take me a very long time to edit. So I would highly appreciate it if you would leave me a like if you found this helpful, and leave me a comment with your feedback. What would you like to see in the benchmarks? What would you like to see differently? Maybe changed? Got a game suggestion? Anything? Just leave it in the comments. It helps the channel immensely as well with the YouTube algorithm, and maybe consider subscribing if you're not already. I've been the FPS Tester, aka Verda. Until next time, guys, take care. Bye.